Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today, kind of not such of a happy topic on our hands this time. It has nothing to do with anime. It has nothing to do with any other show, but kind of a lot of shows actually. We're talking about a matter that's still going on at the time of this recording and is probably not gonna end soon. We are talking about the very recent, very current 2023 Writers Guild of America strike.
Mm-hmm.
And to those who don't know, though, before this is not the first time this is happening. Another strike happened in 2007 and 8, if I recall.
Yes, that strike happened for a lot of the same reasons this strike is happening now. But unfortunately, that strike was, from what I understand, it was poorly timed. And also, so the first strike that happened in 2007 and 2008, that was, if for those who may not be aware, because streaming was just starting to become a thing. None of us back
But
then
but
knew.
just
Oh, go
to
ahead.
make sure that it was starting to become a thing, but it wasn't as much of a thing as it is now. It
No,
was
yeah, it
before
was it was very new at that time, believe it or not, for those of you who are too young to
then.
know.
like
Back
now that
then
I
we
think
watched
about it,
things on the box that we call the TV, and that was
yeah.
the only place we could watch things.
Wait, no, I am just thinking about this listen, people who were like born in, let's say, 2007 are now 16.
Yes, they've
So
they've never
so
heard
there's
of
a
this.
good yeah, so there's a good chance, and not to like delegitimize or something like, but there's a chance that there are people out there who don't remember an age before
Mm.
streaming. Oh God, I feel so old now.
Yes,
Oh
welcome to my
no.
world. Welcome,
Yeah.
join me.
I did in fact turn 30 a month ago, so yeah, I'm in your world now.
It's all downhill from here, man. Trust.
Okay, I trust. I trust.
But yes, back then,
Okay, but
streaming was unknown of. No one knew what it was going to do, where it was going to be, and no one especially knew that it was going to blow up in the way that it has. I mean, quite literally, there are probably some of you watching this who you've never watched a show on television ever, more than likely. Or you never even knew that you could subscribe to television channels. Yes.
yeah, that
So,
was a thing. That was you can, like, when you got a TV, there were like the base channels, but if you wanted more, like, I think I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure for you guys in the US as well, you need like cables to get
yes.
Nickelodeon
Yep.
or something.
Yep, you need
Um,
cable to get like Nickelodeon, and you have to
yeah.
you have to pay extra packages if you want HBO and stuff like that. You can't just stream that.
Yep. Yeah. So same shit here.
Yep, yep.
Just. Mhm.
So yeah,
So,
like
but
that strike failed because no one really knew exactly how things were going to go or happen, and so they got a little bit of what they wanted back then, but really not much. And the big reason for that strike
actually,
was
Wolf, I'm not sure if it was. You know what else was kind of starting around that time of 2007, 2008, even before streaming?
Mhm.
Remember video on demand?
Oh well, yeah, yeah.
That was like streaming prototype that started around that time.
I don't yeah, well, that didn't take off as much, nor was it as big. So I don't know if that had anything impact wise
Okay.
on the strike.
N- No, it's just kind of a realization that I had at the moment
Oh,
because
that's fair.
also I'm not sure how it is for you guys, but like one of the video on demand services that my family and I had, in later revisions, the video on demand just basically became a streaming service.
True.
So in a sense, it was like the prototype, but obviously not related to the streaming we have today. But just
Yeah, that's fair.
interesting to think of at the time. Yeah.
Well, but yeah, so the writer strike back then, more or less, it lasted for 100 days and kind of failed to get exactly what they wanted because, again, it was poorly timed. It came out during like the middle of the season for a lot of shows, and
Yeah, I
again, the
remember
big
Prison
sticking
Break.
point was streaming, and nobody knew anything at that time exactly where it was going to be and how big or if at all, it was going to be able to
Mm.
do anything. And
Yeah.
at the time, the big thing back then was residuals. And we'll kind
Hmm.
of get a bit more into the terms you kind of need to know in a little bit, but let's just say for now, people weren't getting paid what they should have been getting paid or what they felt they were going to get, what they should be getting paid when it came to streaming. But again, nobody knew how big or small streaming would be, so no one could really put a definite on how much you should or should get paid. Fast forward to
Now,
now, where no one got what they wanted back then, and that's become a problem now. So I
yeah.
think before we get into anything, we should kind of give a few terms and a few definitions of terms, right?
So I think the main thing to start with is the residuals, which is
Well, I think
basically.
the big thing we should start with is the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America, as we stated, and the
Yeah.
AMPTP, which is who they're up against, which is the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. These are your
Mhm.
big names like Disney and other
For the
stuff.
record, for the record, if you've stayed until the end of the credits in a movie, and most likely you did with Marvel and everything, right before the end, you probably saw their logo
Yeah,
at the very end. It's always there.
yeah, yeah. You've definitely seen it, but yeah, these are your big companies like Disney and stuff like that. You know, these are the people who release and produce the things you watch, show or movie wise. These are your two main players at the moment. There are others involved where you have
Actually, just
SAG-AFTRA.
as of I think like as of this morning, like your last night, if I recall, I heard the directors are apparently now striking as well. In
Yes, or they're thinking about it, or yeah, even SAG-AFTRA, I believe. And the SAG-AFTRA, for those who may not know, is basically, I'm not going to give you the full thing, but this is your union for your actors and voice actors. This is their guild, their union. For
yeah.
directors, I think that's called like the DAG or the DGA.
Yeah, I think it's D because
Yeah,
it's the
it's the
same initial, but you reply but you replace writers with
Yeah,
directors.
it's the DGA. And you also even have like your Teamsters and your, all of your people who work on production, like your electricians, your, I don't know what your scene people and your caterer people, all that stuff, right? Even they're
Yep.
thinking about honoring picketing lines and striking as well. So this could be very, very big. Right now, it's just the WGA. Things might change as this goes on very quickly. We might release this and it might come out that, oh no, directors are absolutely striking. SAG-AFTRA, the voice actors and actors are absolutely striking.
Well, we need to also, on that note, SAG voice actors also had a strike, like not like 5 years ago.
Mm, this is true. And that was for video games, I believe, though, not
Yeah, it was for
for,
video game.
yeah,
But
this
but the
is
point
for
is, this
Hollywood.
is
This is
always
for
happening.
against them.
Yeah, like this is always happening though. This is a thing that's constant and that's constantly on the news every time it and I can assure you this is after this is settled, which will eventually happen quickly, I hope.
Mm.
And we will probably see this again in like a few more years.
Maybe, hopefully not. But I mean, the reason this continues to happen and the reason you see this every now and again is because these things are set up on contracts. Essentially, the union comes in and says, hey, we're going to make a deal for so many years. I think for the Writers Guild, they do it every 3 years and they come back to the table to renegotiate contracts. And the big thing
Right.
here is that the Writers Guild have come up and said, hey, we want you to pay us a bit more because inflation and you've not been paying us and we've been getting paid less because of streaming services and everything with that, and no one knew how big that was going to be, as well as issues with residuals, which we'll get into, and just a few other things that if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it, I will try and link a Vox article that I have found that I think really goes into the nitty gritty of exactly everything the Writers Guild is asking for. But the big things I think are residuals for streaming and a slightly higher pay increase for for streaming show and movie creation, and for in general your broadcast for TV show and movie creation.
Right.
And so, speaking of residuals, the next definition you need to know. This is
Well,
essentially, you know, so look at it this way. Writers come in and they wrote Friends, the big hit TV show back in the 90s.
okay, I just want to say first and foremost before we even get into
Mm-hmm.
residuals, you I just want to people to know this. Writing for a TV show and writing for a movie are two different things.
But
I have because I can't stress this enough because well, yeah, essentially you write something and
mhm,
that's the script. Actors are gonna memorize it and then read it to a camera. The process and the way this works are different.
this is true.
And what I mean by that is because essentially when you're writing a movie, and keep in mind the process can change based on the project, right? But essentially what happens is that in a movie the studio ends up buying a script from a writer. Like either
Yes.
either if the studio commissions the idea or the writer just writes something and they sell it to a studio and they can do whatever they want. And for the record, there are people, and when you see a movie in theaters, that movie has probably went into production at like its 17th draft or something.
Yeah.
A draft is essentially versions of the script. This is where you experiment. This is where you try new things. When you hear in an earlier draft, that means in an earlier version of the script.
This is why you also might see potentially multiple writing credits because different people came in and wrote on it and edited it.
Yeah, and you see, this is another thing that when there are legit writers who made a living, and by all means, credit to them, by just writing the first drafts of a script, and they moved on to other things, and there's a good chance they won't even be credited in the final movie because what they initially wrote, it was just so different when the movie was eventually released. And believe me, in every movie there could be another type of problem with this sort of thing. You may never know, but essentially when you write a draft for a studio, they pay you for your services, and for all you know, unless they call you back to do rewrites, this is the last connection you'll have to this project. And
But
when the final movie comes out, there's a good chance you won't even see your name on it, or any semblance of what you had there.
but
Maybe.
but that leads us nicely into residuals. Residuals are
Mhm.
a way for
And
writers.
before this, I just want to make sure. I just want
You're
to make
ruining the
sure
fucking segue.
I know
Yes.
that you have a segue, but
It was
just for a
perfect.
TV show, because we'll need to get back into this, so might as well establish this
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
For a TV show, a lot of the time you have what is called a writer's room,
Mm-hmm.
which is all the writers of the show are getting together and they basically brainstorm plot ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's a more common thing now, especially with streaming and ongoing plot lines and arcs. Writer rooms are kind of the essential for a TV show because there are a lot of plot lines. There are a lot of stories that you need to have tie up together, and it really helps to have those writers in a room together. Now, the movies also start doing this, with the MCU and all of that shit, but it's more common in the TV area than the movie area. So just need to make this clear. Now you were about to segue us.
Yes. So everything that was just talked about in regards to, like, hey, you might write on a thing and you might never see your name on it again. You might never come back to it again. That how you made your little bit of money and you hopefully moved on to another project. You may not have. This is where residuals come into effect. Basically, residuals are a thing for writers, especially in this regard, and other people within the industry as well.
Also,
To
actors, directors, people who were
yeah,
involved.
essentially other people in the industry who worked on the film or show specifically, not necessarily your crew people, but the actors and writers, as we said, and directors, stuff like that. Anyways, this is a way for them to continue to get paid off of the product they made, especially because you may not find yourself getting a job for a while after that, or more specifically because that thing may get re-aired. Going back to Friends, from the 90s, a very popular sitcom show. A lot of
Mhm.
different people wrote on that, and you can very clearly, even people who are way younger than us have probably seen an episode of Friends somewhere, either on a streaming
Most
service
likely,
or on TV potentially.
isn't it? I think like it's also on Netflix now,
Yes,
so like
it
there's
is.
no way you haven't seen it. So
But
at least one episode.
every time that show is re-aired anywhere, the original people who worked on that show, even though that show is not being made anymore, still get residuals, aka payment, from any time that show is re-aired. The idea is, if a show or a movie is re-aired, it's taking up a time slot that something new could have been placed in, and new people and or those or other writers could have been paid to work on something new, and they're not. So at the very least, or those same writers could have been paid to work on something new, and they're not. So they're still getting paid from the work they did previously. That's the point of residuals. Now,
Right.
streaming, as far as I'm aware, either doesn't pay any residuals or pays very little residuals. And the way they pay
I'll
their
tell you what.
residuals is
The
way less than what you get paid for broadcast.
I'll tell you what, because the one thing, what's the let's talk about the very basic difference between streaming and TV broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
What's the main difference on a TV broadcast? You need to wait until the show or movie comes on, and you either catch it or you don't. In a streaming sense, then the thing is just available to you, and you just choose when to watch it, for how long you'll watch it. Maybe you'll watch a bit on today, stop, and continue the rest tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So when push comes to shove, streaming is a lot more immediate. Streaming is a lot more because you can never know when someone is gonna watch something on a streaming right. Again,
Mm-hmm.
on a broadcast, you can set, okay, this is gonna debut on so and so day at so and so hour. With streaming, it's just, I just woke up this morning and I felt like watching Friends. Let's go with that. Let's go with that example.
Bringing it
I,
back.
I, yeah, but we gave this example some other one. So I just woke up today and said, you know what? I feel like watching a few episodes of Friends. So like there's no way like either the people behind the show, the company who produced it, or the streaming service in general. There's no way they're gonna know that there's some dude somewhere in the world that said, you know what, I want to watch Friends now. So I guess it's just something that's becoming harder and harder to track down. And yes, there is data for it, but then you also need to take into account where was the show watched, for how long, how many so and so. This is not a deal you necessarily have with the broadcasting channel, and there you go. It's aired. You're done. You got the money because you set it out to air. This is just it's available. Who knows if someone is gonna watch it now or
Yeah.
today? You get what I mean?
Yeah, residuals were created for broadcast television, which is, worked then. Now with streaming, residuals, you can't exactly work it the same way, and there's probably a lot that needs to be worked out there and figured
And
out. But
there is also something regarding this, that streaming services, be it Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever, people can say as much as they want, watch this on this so that we'll get more of this show, or we'll get more of this movie, so and so. Then there's also the thing that they really they really only look at the initial numbers after the thing premiered.
well,
Like
the
num
way Netflix gauges it, if I'm not mistaken, from what I understand, is time watched. They gauge it by like the amount of time watched. The number of people who watch it doesn't necessarily matter to them as much. It's
I think it's more just how much do people watch it when it premieres. Like let's
well, it's a
assume.
thing of like, say you watch an episode of Arcane, right? And you watch one
Mhm,
episode, and you watch, say, one episode of Arcane was 30 minutes long. I know it's longer than it. Just follow with me here. And you
yeah.
watched 20 minutes of it. Netflix can, and you watched 20 minutes of each episode, or you watched the majority of each episode. Netflix would consider that a success, right? Say you
hmm
watched only 10 minutes of episode 1 and then stopped and haven't come back to it since, that would be considered a failure, the way I think Netflix judges it. Don't quote me. They're very they've not been very like they're not very clear with how they judge things, and
Yeah,
like it's not
because
very
now
open about it.
recently, because now recently there's this entire thing of they only really see how many people are watching it once a season of a show drops,
Mhm.
because that's like when the iron is hot. Like if it's not striking when the iron is hot, then it's not gonna strike at all.
Mm.
So there's also that, and it's just honestly, I think in a way it's so nice to have this entire thing, convenient to you whenever you can watch and you want to watch something. But damn, did streaming actually fuck us over with a lot of things, like industry people
Well,
for the most
it's again, right? It's that things needed to be figured out and worked out back
part.
then, but because none of us knew how big or small streaming was ever going to be, it was hard to work
Yeah,
things out. And now we're in this situation where things weren't worked out, and writers are being paid either barely anything or nothing at all in terms of working on these things after the fact, and companies are continuing to try and find ways to pay them as little as possible, right?
yeah.
And
And for the record, you need to realize that essentially the people, be it Netflix or Disney or insert company here, the thing because because for an outsider they can look at just this entire strike and think, why do the people behind this so and so product want more money? They made the thing, move on. Or some people can say, oh,
well,
why, this company as a multi-billion dollar company, why can they pay more? You need to understand that what people are really after is either money for their services or money for their business. And this is where the conflict relies.
yeah,
Obviously, for a
a
person from
business
the
wants
outside,
to make more money,
the,
and if they have to pay you more, they're making less. They don't want to do that, even though stuff like
yeah,
Netflix and other companies have made billions of dollars, and what the writers are asking for is a smidgen of that, a 2% increase in overall pay. The all the AMPT people, all the Disney, other companies like that, they don't want to pay it at all. They have outright refused most of the offers that the Writers Guild put forward, essentially, and that's one of the reasons why
oh,
the Writers Guild have gone on strike.
right.
But yeah, there's definitely some
So,
things that I think need to be worked out, and residuals with streaming will probably continue to be a point of contention because that's going to be very hard to dictate and decide a lot on. But on average, even your general pay for writers when it comes to working on streaming shows and movies has been less than what it is for broadcast. And even broadcast has gone down in payment as well because of this. So, in general,
uh-huh.
they're here trying to strike to get more money. That's the big thing. And residuals is the big thing. And just trying to make sure whenever you work on a streamed show, you're getting paid something similar to what you should be when you work on broadcast television.
Hmm.
Now,
Yep.
that's the big thing. Now, kind of getting into it, so you kind of know why the strike is happening. How did this affect the shows you watch, though, right?
Hmm. And this is another time for a misconception, because people assume that people just write a script and there you go. This is it, done. And in some cases, yeah, it can be true, but like for a show and even for
Well,
movies,
it's very different for
sometimes
very different types of shows too. Like you have very
yeah,
different types
like
of shows that
there
this could
are a
affect.
lot of instances. There are a lot of instances where a writer needs to be on set and constantly rewrite what's already been written. This is happening a lot of times in and you'll find a lot of writers are actually on the set of their films, and not just if they have another role like as a producer or director or something, because you could say, well, there are writer directors and all that shit, which, yeah, but writers are a part of the experience, and they are sometimes on set, because if last minute changes are needed, the movie needs the writer.
Mhm.
And it's not just that somebody is just gonna jump in and be like, oh, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. And they're also script, they're also head of stories and script people who are on set as well to make sure that the actors remember their lines, or if changes are made, if they can be walked out, and to make sure continuity is a thing. Those people are constantly working, and there's a good chance that, while even if they're not screenplay writers, they are a part of the strike.
So, getting into it, right? One thing, like, going back to the 2007 strike, did you watch The Office? Did you watch Scrubs? You probably noticed, some of these seasons are shorter than others. That was because of the strike, because those shows were written more of because those shows were more, your network dramas or very lengthy season shows. They were written basically, writers were working on future episodes as the show was being shot. And so those
Yep.
shows had shorter episodes or had to outright cut their seasons short and be replaced by something like, The Celebrity Apprentice. That went on very well. But yeah, like they had to replace their, stuff like Office and Scrubs back then with essentially reality TV show stuff. And so those things were cut short. Other stuff like, the things you'll notice that will be immediately affected by this, and have already been affected by this, are your stuff like Saturday Night Live or your late night variety show stuff. Those things are literally
And
written the same day they recorded and shown live. And if you can't
mhm,
write, well, those shows are not happening right now. So if you like watching those
yeah.
types of shows, you'll probably see reruns or just nothing at all.
hmm Yeah, so and also now it was just let known that season 5 of Stranger Things is going into hiatus until this thing is sorted out, because
Mhm.
this is a show that needs the writers on set, because they need to make sure continuity is a thing.
Now, speaking of that, though, that's a thing right now, right? Back in 2007, and even before then, when we had strikes before then, the way shows were written, you tended to have stuff coming out more periodically. There was like a schedule to things, and things were coming out somewhat more often. Nowadays, you can have large gaps between many of the shows and many of the seasons that we watch. And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that's
Like
why
for the
the
record, for the
AMPTP feels so confident in just saying no to many of the WGA's, wants and needs right now, because they just have, well, things take so long anyways. What do we care if we have a gap now? It doesn't matter to us anymore. And that's not the
and
only
also
issue here, but we'll
because
get
they
there.
have, and also those companies have so much content that they need to consider when to air, how to air it, and all of that stuff. That essentially to them, this is a completely not an issue to just let a show break for almost a year mid-season, air something else, and then suddenly continue airing it. And like you can notice this with a lot of shows that with some shows that don't start on streaming, like I think the Owl House, for example, between just in the middle of season 2, there was like almost a year-long gap, I want to say,
Mhm.
or what was it, 10 months?
Oh, I don't remember, to be honest, but it was a fairly decent gap.
Yeah, it was a long time. I'm looking it up as we speak, but the point is, it was a long time, and a lot of people still, and a lot of people do ask now with with stuff like streaming, that's only just has this, oh, everything is just there. Why why not, everything just come enters it and just comes out, so why keep the weekly schedule to some things? Because streaming are now doing this too, like Disney Plus. Whenever a Marvel show comes out, and I think even the Star Wars shows, they still air this weekly. Like
Mhm.
episodes go out in a week. And I think also you mentioned Arcane on Netflix. That was like we talked about this when we covered the show. It was like 3 episodes, then another three, then another three.
Yes.
So, and by the way, I just checked Owl House for the season 2 of the Owl House. The last episode of the first half was in August of 2021, and the show came back in March of 2022. So not a year, but it was a
It was
while.
a gap, right? And
Mhm.
so that's why the AMPTP, feels like they can just outright refuse a lot of the WGA's asks here, because they feel like, well, it doesn't matter. We have more ground than what we think, you do, right? And so, but there's an even bigger issue at play that writers are striking for, and that they really want to make certain is settled now and not have the same problem that they're having with streaming now, and that is AI.
I was about to
So
touch upon this
AI
because
is the big thing where we have no clue what this is or is not going to do. It could be huge in how it affects things. It could be nothing.
I'll
But
tell
the
you what,
WGA doesn't want to take the
I've
chance that it
recently
does.
heard, I recently, I'm not gonna mention names or how I know. There are people who like literally used an AI to draw something, right? Just have like the basic outline for an art, and then hired actual artists to draw it and make it look good and everything, and then posted it as this is what AI can do
Mhm.
without crediting the people.
So yeah,
And also, you need and at the time of this recording, AI is just something that's getting started. People are already starting to aim for it in writing, but it's still not quite there. There's still a lot of things to figure out and stuff.
but
But
the idea
you know,
here though is that companies might use AI to generate a script and then have writers come in to touch it up and make it better. In which case, writers would be paid even less, or it might replace them outright eventually, or
mhm.
also the hope with AI, right? I think if it can be used to lessen the workload of creative people like your artists, your animators, and your writers, that would be great. But the Writers Guild
But
and many
not
other
take
people
away their
see that
content.
companies aren't going to do that. They would rather replace than use to lessen the load of, and just outright not have to pay writers and animators and artists, which is
And
the
there you
problem.
go.
So, that's also a big issue here as well. But how does this, getting back to how this affects the shows you watch, as we said, you might, if you watch Saturday Night Live and your late night variety stuff, you'll see an immediate effect already. If you
Mhm.
watch your network dramas, like we've talked about, you might start to see an effect if the strike lasts for a longer period of time. Anything else, if it's just the writers striking and it goes on for a long period of time, you're really not going to notice too much if you don't watch your network drama stuff or if you don't watch your late night stuff. However, as we stated, it looks like the Directors Guild might also be looking at striking. It looks like the Voice Actors and Actors Guild might also be looking at striking. That
Yeah.
changes the game considerably, because if
Mhm.
your actors and voice actors go on strike, you immediately can't do anything. No one can do anything, because if you
Yeah.
don't have
And
actors and voice
also,
actors to
this is
act,
another.
you're done.
Yeah, no, I just want to say that you say that, but now But I'm not sure if you heard about this, but AI started to cause some problems with voice actors
Yes,
too,
because
because
it can mimic voices and like their
yeah,
looks and everything, and that's it's getting really good at doing that for some of the stuff we've heard, right?
I'm not sure if you know, but there is that like this whole SpongeBob game. I think it's called Sinister Squidward, which is basically Hello Neighbor, but with Squidward and Sandy as the playable character.
Hmm.
So this uses AI to replicate the voices from the show,
Hmm.
and it's even like you can tell that this is a computer, right? You can tell that it's not the actors actually doing the lines. It doesn't, but if fuck if it's not actually pretty damn accurate.
I mean,
And
even I don't know if you've heard any of it, but like there's a lot of the meme stuff going around with like President Biden and President Trump and President Obama playing games together, or just stuff like that, or
yeah,
Joe
yeah,
Rogan,
yeah, people,
stupid shit
you
like
see,
that, and you listen to that and
mhm.
it's like this, like you can tell, but some of it sounds really good now, and it's kind of scary how good it sounds.
Yeah, like I'll tell you, like again, I bring back, if you haven't looked at it, look up Sinister Squidward on YouTube. You'll find it, no problem.
I'm
The
sure, right? I'm sure if you wanted to, just go through all of the podcasts here on the Berkcast and Outcast and scrub it, and you could probably come up with enough voice lines for an AI that's good enough to mimic our voices, even.
Yeah, most likely. Just
Don't do that,
please
but
don't do, don't do that because I want to sleep at night. I don't.
You could
I
make
don't want
HC say anything you want.
to. Well, you can make an AI version of this yet, but if but let's assume I think people will know where people who know me will know
Yeah.
when to cut the bullshit. Like, let's say if somebody uses my voice to say, I don't know what's the thing I won't say ever. Okay, let's assume somebody uses my voice to say I hate Sonic the Hedgehog. Then you know it's bullshit
Well, now they
because it's
have a
not.
voice clip line. You've said it now.
Yeah, because I said it like this. It's not. It's people will figure out. It's not
Anyways,
fake. It's
but
not
yeah,
fake. It's
like
not real.
but yeah, it can be, it's scary how good it is getting, right?
Yeah,
It's also kind of interesting, but yeah, like everyone's kind of worried about what this may or may not do
because
and where it may or may not lead. We don't really
and I'll
know
tell
enough
you
now,
what.
but
And I'll tell you what, I think AI essentially is what streaming was in that previous strike. Like, this is this new tool
yes.
that we don't know how it's gonna turn out. Like, streaming ended up being the next big thing, and everyone has a streaming service now.
Mm.
Everyone, and there are so many streaming services out there. There's no way you can be subscribed to everything. But with that being said, though, nobody can figure out yet if in a few years AI is gonna become the next new thing when it comes to creating content.
I mean, to be honest,
We
we
don't.
don't even know where we're at in like the curve of how AI is going to change. Are we at the beginning
There
of
you
it?
go.
Are we in the middle of it already? Or are we like at the peak of it already and it's just not going to change anything? Like, we have no clue with this. Like, this is
Yeah, this
enjoy.
is
Welcome to the world of all of us millennials who are around for streaming and other, technological advancements that have come along since then. And we're getting to see it firsthand now, again, with AI. It'll be fun times. It won't be fun times.
I don't know if it will be fun because it's already kind of scary, and
Mm.
scary is not fun.
Like, I hope the hope would be right that this stuff comes out and companies are able to utilize this to make workloads easier for all of the workforce, not just within, creative works, but even within your regular, 9 to 5 job works, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we don't have any proof that that'll be the case. You already look at AI creators and they're already talking about, hey, we can do these things that creative people can do in these situations and you don't even need them anymore. The way they're talking about it, they're outright talking about just getting rid of these people. The way companies in general are talking about it,
Which,
they're talking
yeah,
about
which
using it to
is bullshit.
replace, not help, replace. That is a problem.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah, like
the
if it
Writers
was
Guild wants
to
to get
help,
ahead of this already and already have protections in place for their writers and workers and say, yeah, you can use it, but if you do, and you're still going to pay our people exactly what they should be getting paid, right? And
Mhm.
that's the goal here. And the AMPTP refuses to even hear the notion. They don't want to talk about any of it
And
in this session.
the
They want to talk
other
about
thing
it on
is,
an annual basis and come to the table every so often to talk about it. The Writers Guild does not want to do that because that could horribly, horribly, if they wait even 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe, again, as an example, right? The WGA comes together to renegotiate contracts every 3 years. That 3 years could be pivotal in AI development, right? AI could, within that 3 years, even within a year from now, AI could be good enough to do the thing they're afraid that it can, they're afraid it might be able to do already, right?
yeah,
3 years, it could probably absolutely do that potentially. No one knows where it might be at within a year to 3 years from now. And so they want to set protections in place for their people now, which is completely understandable. The MPTP does not want to do this because if they let it go and are able to discuss it annually, and AI writing does get to that point within that next 3 years, they're in a much stronger place than the Writers Guild would ever be in.
right.
So, hence the fear and worry about it now. Why it's considered
Scary
this
talk.
is potentially very bad for us, and
Yeah.
it's fair. But again, this is why the
Honestly, like,
AMPTP
just thinking about
does
it,
not want to come to the table, and the Writers Guild does.
yeah. And the other thing I'm want to mention because I've already heard talks about this. There is a chance that the MP, I I can't believe I forgot it. You just said it.
The
MPT,
AMPTP, the Alliance Motion
AMP.
Picture,
Yeah, basically them. You know, they
the
are
companies.
apparently, yeah, those guys, they're apparently, on the hunt for new aspiring riders to try and trick them into replacing the ones who are striking, so that essentially they won't have to compromise and they can fuck up new people,
Mhm.
which is honest. It's just as scary, if not scarier, honestly.
It's scummy, and that's just how it go. Unfortunately,
Hmm. Yeah.
hopefully that's not going to work out for them too well. But yeah, you also, potentially, if this strike does go on for long enough, you might see streaming services pull in media from overseas, like, Korean and Japanese shows. You might see more of that. You might see more European made shoshows instead of anything from
Yeah,
Hollywood.
because already, that's been going on for like decades at this point. When like, at least with animation, it's just cheaper for studios to outsource the animation process to a studio overseas rather than have it animated in house.
Hmm.
So that's another thing. Like, we like now we're probably just going to see just the implication of that, everything that's not AI or created within Hollywood is gonna come from from other countries, and that's a whole other headache sometimes.
But yeah, in a general sense, right? If you're a moviegoer and movie watcher, you're not going to notice too much of anything. If you're a TV show watcher, it really depends on one, how long the strike lasts, and two, if other organizations choose or do not choose to strike as well. If they
Yeah,
do,
but
and
at
it's
the
looking
same
very much like they
time,
will, this might get resolved quicker, but you will definitely notice something at that point, right?
yeah, because I just want to say I'm not sure if it's related to the strike, but apparently one of the writers of the next Avengers movie is out of the project.
Hmm.
Like, this is like a recent news. I'm not entirely sure if it relates to the strike or not, but if it does, we already see the implications.
Yep, it's true.
So basically, honestly, we're kind of living in a, when it comes to this kind of stuff, we are living in a dark time because who knows where this is gonna go? AI could totally do the thing that we are afraid it's gonna do, or it can crash and burn before we even say. Maybe it's peaking now and it will never be the same.
Yeah, like
And whatever the companies need to do, I just hope that the people behind the shows and the movies that we watch need to be fairly compensated. As someone who tries to to get into this industry because I studied it, I love this
mhm.
stuff. I hope that the people who work hard will get what they deserve.
Oh, speaking of that, I'm sure many people are wondering what are things we as viewers and as watchers and enjoyers of this content, what can we do? Not really a whole lot in this regard, other than just show your support. These people make
Mhm.
some amazing stuff. We've talked about many different things that we have loved here on the Outcast and the Berkcast, right? This stuff
Yeah,
would not be made
definitely.
without these amazing writers, and for them to be able to do things and not have to worry about can they make rent the next month for the city they live in, right? Because they're not getting
Right.
paid enough. So just,
Mhm.
show your support and make sure they know that, hey, we are here for you. We support you in this endeavor, and we hope you get paid what you deserve to get paid, because you deserve it, because you've
Yeah.
created some good shit when they
Hmm.
let you create good shit, at least anyways. And, if you see people that you know of and are aware of that, maybe they have, like, hey, here's some GoFundMe's or some Patreons, and you feel like donate a little bit to that, and that helps them out, do that. I don't know the full scope of everything there and how they
Yeah,
are and aren't allowed to
there's
do
a lot
things,
of,
right?
you can always show your support, which is always great. But in terms of the thing is, it's complicated because the I could just easily tell you to not watch something, but the thing is, because it's an
I
entire
mean, there's no
organization, so
way
it's
to,
basically,
like, yeah, it's like a multitude of different companies. There's no way to really tell you do or don't watch something, right?
Like,
That's
let's assume this
hard
is
to
not like
say.
a thing like, oh, we hate that Disney continues doing those shitty live action remakes. Let's not watch them. This is a whole other thing. This is like you need to stop watching everything.
Pretty much.
Absolutely everything is off the table now.
Well,
And it's a bit hard, and it's a bit hard when, because those people are also involved with stuff like the news. Those people are involved with stuff, with stuff that, like, you just accidentally open the TV for some reason. Bam, you are you are essentially watching content that someone is not gonna get paid for, and it sucks. It really sucks.
well,
But
I will say like news and stuff like that. Those people will still be working. They're not on strike. Like your
I
your radio stuff, your like live news, things like that. They don't work in the same way. They're on like a
of
different thing. But anyways, yeah. But yeah,
well,
at the very least, right? I'm sure, like many of us, even us here on this show right now, you probably have a backlog. Go and watch old stuff that you didn't get the chance to watch that has already aired and already passed its
yeah, like,
time. Go watch
well,
that.
if you have a DVD and Blu-ray collection like me, maybe it's time to revisit some stuff, or you
Yeah,
know, all play video games.
or play video games. We're
Oh,
okay
just
for now.
yeah. I hope. I
Listen,
hope.
I'm sure Zelda Tears of the Kingdom will occupy your time for many, many hours, so you'll be set
It's
for
already
probably
occupied.
most of this
It's
strike.
already occupied mine for like a week. I actually took a break from it today. I played something else because,
I've had it for about two
but
days. I have known
yes,
nothing but Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
yeah. So yeah, this
I'm
is
sure
occupying.
if you're playing that, yeah, you'll be busy for the entirety of the strike, unless the strike lasts for over a year, in
Oh,
which case,
unless you're one of those
who
people
knows?
that already have like walkthroughs on YouTube, like, hey, I beat this in 94 minutes and
We
all of that
we don't
shit.
talk about those people.
Yeah.
They're weird.
Uh, yeah, let's go with that. But anyway, really, not much of a thing we can do but pray that this will end soon and that the people who are striking will be fairly compensated.
Yeah, you want at the very least we want writers to walk away from this getting somewhat higher pay, better residuals, and like something's better worked out for streaming, and we want them to have some protections against if AI becomes a bigger thing in the future, and basically have better protections against what AI may or may not become. If it becomes nothing and we jumped the gun here and we had nothing to fear, great, that's perfectly fine. At least the protections are still in place. If it does become something, those protections are already ready to go. They need that because they didn't have that for streaming, and it's really hurt them now. And there's a few things here that the strike is asking for that we've not even touched on, like that gets more into the nitty gritty of things, like mini rooms and how that affects writers' rooms and how that affects like scripts in general and script writing and how that's done. It's so much stuff going on here that streaming has really changed the game of and really messed things up for writers, that writers want to get back to how things were. Not because how things were better and the new way of doing things is bad. It's because they've changed up the game and they've hurt writers in terms of revenue, what they get paid, and how they get paid for their work. And it's definitely not fair for the writers.
Very much so. Well, anything else to say before we wrap this up besides praying for a future where robots won't take us over?
I, for one, support our AI overlords. Please don't kill me.
Uh,
Listen, I'm just gonna get in, good now, and then hopefully I'll be okay for the future.
all I'm gonna
I'll toady
say,
hard.
all I'm gonna say is the Eggman Empire won't take me.
With that said,
With that said, I think this is it for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you are not completely terrified, what are your thoughts about the strike and where things go and how bad things can get? You can tell us all about it in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team, and on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.
Don't go to any robot overload.